Good morning everybody and welcome to the Cabinet meeting of the 30th of June. I'm obliged to inform you that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. If any members of the public present has concerns about this, please raise them now. Since our last meeting, we've seen many developments in Shropshire as we aim towards our key goals of nurturing a county with healthy people and a healthy economy. I want to first acknowledge the significant challenge we currently face due to the growing number of coronavirus cases in the county. As across the UK, we've seen rises over the last few weeks, largely as a result of the Delta variant. In the first 2 weeks of June, cases in Shropshire have nearly quadrupled. We are, however, still significantly below the regional average, and thankfully the number of people in hospital remains in single figures. Like many of you, I too want to return to normal, or as near normal as quickly as we can. I was disappointed that restrictions could not be eased as planned, but if we remain cautious and be on our guard, I'm sure we will get there very soon. There's no doubt the easing of lockdown will not only provide a huge lift for us personally, but perhaps more importantly, a much needed boost to the county's economy. I really hope that this will be in time for the May and summer holidays. The fact that we're talking about this is down to the fantastic vaccination effort from so many partners around the county, and which this council has played a hugely significant part. The Grab a Jab event last weekend, when any adult could get a first or second vaccination without an appointment, was another example. An indication of the commitment of those involved in the vaccination effort came from a colleague who, driving past Shrewsbury's vaccination on Saturday, their day off, saw the queues and dived in to help and get more people vaccinated. I've heard many such stories of dedication among council and other staff involved. The route out of lockdown is in our hands, with the perfect match of vaccination and regular home testing twice a week. So please find the nearest place to get your free rapid test kits at one of the 70 locations across the county, and please do use them. A major step forward for the £4.3 million expansion to Bishop's Castle Business Park. Business Park will be expanded by some 50,000 square feet, and this expansion will support more businesses and jobs in the area, with the council investing £3.1 million in this and creating the right conditions for that healthy economy. In mid-June, the council hosted Tech 7, showcasing how technology can help tackle the climate change crisis. This attracted a global audience and speakers, and an opening address by the government's UK Net Zero business champion, Andrew Griffith MB. It's a real achievement for the council and for Shropshire to host such an event. Finally, last week the council and many other organisations came together to mark Armed Forces Week and pay tribute to the role of the military, with which Shropshire has very strong links. I was delighted to see us re-sign our Armed Forces Covenant and help encourage many more county businesses and other organisations to sign the pledge for the first time. And next week, alongside Shropshire's Lord Lieutenant, we will be marking the NHS Social Care and Frontline Workers Day and the NHS's birthday. It's a chance for us all to pause and reflect and thank a huge range of people, from NHS staff, care workers, supermarket employees, teachers, and so many others, including our own council staff, who have kept us going throughout the pandemic. Your efforts that have been made over the last 15 months have made it so much easier for so many people, and you deserve our wholehearted thanks and appreciation. Right, on to business. So, find my agenda. Apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies for absence, Tim?
Leader, we have apologies from Ian Nellens, who's not able to join us in the room. He is joining us remotely, but that means he won't be able to vote today.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Nellens. I know you're on the call. Any disclosable pecuniary interests? No. Thank you. So the minutes from the last meeting held on the 7th of June are attached to our document pack. Do I have a proposer for these?
Chair, could I raise some issues on the minutes? Councillor David Vasma here.
Yes, Councillor Vasma, go ahead.
Yeah, just there's no reference to the group leaders being present, and in the item on regarding Ed Potter made a statement which is not recorded on consultation, further consultation. And I was wondering why there is not a more detailed response to the report of the minutes.
The minutes are usually a factor when on Councillor Vasma. If it's not minuted that the group leaders were actually in the meeting, I imagine that's because joining online actually doesn't count due to the legislation, but I'm looking for guidance from Tim, is that correct?
Yeah.
I suppose we can make a note somewhere. No, we can't. I'm just being given that information. So forgive me, Councillor Vasma, but unless the legislation changes, that's the way it is. Our minutes have always been a record of decisions made as opposed to a script.
But there was a commitment at the meeting. There was a commitment given by Councillor Ed Potter to further consultation, which is not minuted. I've taken a note of it myself, and I can't find it at the moment. But I know that there was a commitment made, and it's not in the actual. It's not actually recorded.
Right. Okay. Well, I undertake then to go back and look at that.
Okay. Thank you.
So if I do that, are we happy to accept the minutes? Proposed Steve Chalmley, seconded Dean Carroll. Thank you very much. So moving on to public question time. In the usual way, Tim will read the questions and the portfolio holder will give the answer. Tim, first question, please.
Although, Leader, we are looking to change this.
Yes, we are. Actively.
So the first question is from a Claire Kirby about the North West Relief Road. The question is, how much of the £87 million budget for the road has been spent to date? Brackets, including any associated costs such as council officer costs, planning and preparation. And how much more money does Shropshire Council anticipate spending before the scheme formally comes to the council for approval? Given the recent information regarding significant potential overspend on the road, what other assets is the council proposing to sell to pay for the road, and can you give a guarantee that there will be no increases to council plans?
And the answer will be provided by Councillor Steve Chalmers.
Thank you, Claire, for the question. The answer I'm prepared to give is the project has predicted costs of £5,128,342. Of course, this is subject to any design changes or issues raised during the planning process, which is ongoing.
Thank you, Steve. Next question, please, Tim.
The next question is from Adam Ship, again about the North West Relief Road. The Norwich Western Link is a 3.9 mile road with a 720 metre long viaduct over the River Wensum. The North West Road is a 4 mile road with a 690 metre long viaduct over the River Severn. The cost of the Norwich Western Link rose last month to a staggering £198 million. In comparison to the North West Road, which has been estimated to cost £87 million. Given this cost reality check, will Shropshire Council A, drop this expensive unpopular road before costs spiral out of control, B, detail where the potential shortfall of 111 million will be found, and C, state what specific cost the North West Relief Road becomes financially untellable?
And again, the answer provided by Councillor Steve Chalmers.
Thank you, Adam, for yet another question on the same theme. The council does not intend to drop the North West Relief Road, which is seen as a critical piece of infrastructure for the county. The scheme will, however, continue to be reviewed and developed in line with the agreed project milestones to ensure that it delivers affordable and effective outcomes.
Thank you, Steve. And the final question, Tim.
This is from Jackie Jones, again on the North West Relief Road. The North West Road is currently projected to cost £87.2 million. At present, Shropshire Council will receive £54.4 million from government and £4.2 million from the Marches let. If the council has promised to only allocate £300,000 of SIL money to the project and to sell 21 hectares of our land for housing developments, where will the rest of the money come from? What are the contingencies in the event of a significant overspend, and exactly where will this money come from? The council has already stated it has spent 5.8 million on designing and planning the North West Road up until March 2020. What is the current figure, please?
And again, Councillor Steve Charnley.
Can I thank Jackie for the question? It sounds very familiar to the last ones, but slightly different style. It is hoped that the road will be funded without any contribution from the council, but the council will underwrite any shortfall from its own capital budget programme, as long as the business case continues to show significant net benefit. The cost up to March 2021 of the scheme design, development and delivery of the current planning application is 9.1 million.
Thank you, Steve. And the final public question, Tim.
Thank you. This is a question about Whitchurch swimming pool from Anne Bosket. My question, what provision will be put in place to ensure those people in Whitchurch who have no means of transport have access to a public swimming facility whilst the new pool is being built, and timescale for this to be achieved?
Thank you. And the answer will be provided by Councillor Cecilia Motley.
Thank you to Anne Bosket for the question. As with all Shropshire Council capital build projects, there will be a travel plan, and this will form part of the detailed feasibility study should a decision to be made to consider replacing the existing facility. The decision will be made with the long-term benefits for Whitchurch and the surrounding area in mind, along with the most effective use of council resources. We do understand, however, the short-term effects this will have on those residents anxious to maintain a level of physical activity, and as such will work closely with Shropshire Community Leisure Trust to provide access to alternative facilities wherever possible. That said, there are public swimming facilities located closer to Whitchurch than those operated by the Trust, which are accessible by public transport, namely Wem, but also Nantwich. Following any decisions made today, I will make it a priority to discuss this situation with council officers and Shropshire Community Leisure Trust to see what, if any, provisions can be implemented. Subject to Cabinet agreeing the recommendations, the indicative timescales for completing the additional feasibility works and public stakeholder engagement consultation exercise is as follows. Procurement of external professional support and surveys as required for the feasibility study phase, July to August 2021. Feasibility study and public stakeholder engagement consultation exercise, September 2021 to February 2022, and report back to Cabinet March 2022. Thank you.
Thank you, Cecilia. We now move on to item number 5, which is member question time. I believe we have one member question from Councillor Duncan Kerr, who is joining us via video link. Councillor Kerr, would you like to read your question, please?
Yes, I was rather wondering if Tim would read it in his dulcet tones, but you've got my voice. So good morning to everybody on the Cabinet. The question is on the cultural strategy, which is on your agenda for today. So according to the evidence base, Shropshire Council invests some £10.6 million into cultural services. Same document goes on to say the largest proportion of this is spent on theatres and public entertainment, 4.8 million, the main centres being Theatre 7 and the Old Market Hall in Shrewsbury and the Assembly Rooms in Ludlow. The investment into these facilities has been considerable, with 3.5 million just spent on the latter. The good news is that the council operates these centres at a profit, which is a great credit to everybody involved. The bad news is that none of these facilities are close to and therefore available to the people of Oswestry, the second largest town in the county. Neither does Oswestry contain any of the 6 museums operated by Shropshire Council. In many ways, the county mirrors the country. Oswestry has 2 wards in the 20% most deprived areas in the country. It also has higher unemployment and lower wages than Shropshire as a whole, and more people reporting health limitations. On almost any deprivation matrix, from car ownership to qualifications, Oswestry performs worse than the county as a whole, underlining the need for major investment here. Nationally, the government has embarked on a levelling up strategy to overcome similar historic inequalities in the provision of resources and funding, Recognising that investing in culture can be a great catalyst for economic and social renewal, as I'm sure you're aware. However, I see nothing in the cultural strategy that recognises the divide we have in Shropshire or seeks to level up the investment. There is a perfect opportunity to do this as part of the emerging Oswestry Master Plan, but to date there's been no evidence that Shropshire Council is prepared to make a significant investment in the cultural assets of Oswestry. And if Shropshire Council in its cultural strategy can't identify the shortfall, then the master plan can't pick up upon that with solutions. The innovation part for Oswestry is greatly welcomed, but without accompanying investment in the cultural life of the town, we will not secure the sustainable economic generation that we all want to see. So rather than miss the opportunity to level up services across the county, I'm asking you to defer approval of this strategy, provide time to work with the Town Council, Oswestry BID and the future Oswestry Group, and for Shropshire Council to commit to a levelling up agenda, provide the injection of resources into the cultural life of Oswestry that will go some way to rectifying years of underfunding when compared to other major settlements of Shropshire. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kerr, and the answer will be provided by Councillor Cecilia Motley.
Thank you, Councillor Kerr. And the response to that is that the cultural strategy for Shropshire has been developed through and by partners and stakeholders and has been the subject of extensive consultation across the county. This report asks formal council support for the future development of the strategy, which is hoped will be developed and delivered by an independent cultural partnership or compact, which will come together to identify how best we can work together to embed culture and cultural activities across the whole of Shropshire. Arts Council England has expressed an interest in providing independent support to assist with setting up a new cultural compact that will provide leadership and strategic capacity. Major funding organisations such as Arts Council England and the National Lottery had raised concerns in the past about the lack of strategic direction for the cultural sector in Shropshire and had called for a partnership approach to clarify priorities for the county. The cultural strategy now addresses this and evidences the need for further investment in cultural activities and venues, which it is intended will help secure external funding for Oswestry, amongst other places, in a field which is becoming increasingly competitive. The compact or partnership will be representative of the whole of Shropshire, and its role will be to drive the development and implementation of a place-based action plan to deliver the cultural strategy. The strategy seeks to work across all of Shropshire with key partners and stakeholders to embed the intrinsic value of culture in supporting and enriching the everyday lives of our local and regional communities. It provides a shared strategic vision upon which we can build to strengthen the positive role and impact of culture across everything we do in Shropshire. A goal of the new partnership will be to ensure representation from across all of Shropshire, including Oswestry, and with this, develop a clear action plan and delivery mechanism for the future. The Council is one of many partners who have been and will continue to work together across Shropshire to ensure this happens. Subject to Cabinet approval, we look forward to working with Oswestry Town Council and many others in taking the next steps to deliver this strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Motley. Councillor Kerr, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I suppose the one thing, I don't disagree a lot of what Councillor Motley says, but the one issue she hasn't really addressed is the need for levelling up across the county, and specifically my question was addressed to identifying the need for recognising inequality of historic provision of resources and stating very clearly that preference will be given to those areas of the county which are under-resourced, and I don't see the strategy as doing this.
Do you want to come back, Councillor Motley?
Yes, I would just like to say that the whole point of the strategy, it is very important that we get this strategy through. And the reason for that, quite simply, is because without it, it is very difficult for us to gain substantial funding. And it is one of the criticisms, as I said in my reply, that's been levelled at us by the Arts Council and other large bodies such as the National Lottery. So we really need to get this cultural strategy. We absolutely acknowledge that more investment has gone in some places than others, and we have every intention of working hard with those areas who haven't received as much to see what we can do. But we need to be working with local people and with the local town council in order to achieve this. Thank you.
And I would add to that, Councillor Kerr, that this is the beginning rather than the end. This is the beginning of the process. And if we do want to be able to level up investment across the county in more ways than just with the cultural strategy, we have to have this document in place to ensure that we can get the finances. Because until this document is actually in place, we will find it very difficult to secure any further funding at all. So thank you for that. Okay, so now we move on to item number 6, which is scrutiny items, and I believe that the chair of the Place Scrutiny Committee, Councillor Joyce Barrow, is joining us. Joyce, would you like to outline your report, please?
I would, thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be presenting this paper to Cabinet today, as the election got in the way of presenting it earlier, on the findings of my task and finish group on highways winter maintenance. Winter maintenance came to the Place Overview Committee in March because there was widespread concern at the lack of communication over gritting and frustration over the inability in some areas to request grit and grit bins. So we agreed to set up a working group. 4 members of the committee took part. We also had responses to a call for evidence from 3 more councillors and 23 town and parish councils, so you can tell this was a hot topic. The task and finish group reported back to the committee in April with a series of recommendations for Shropshire Council, including a review of the winter service protocol, including a review of the winter gritting network, which currently is only 28% of the road network, a review of grit bins and the ordering process, new ways of working with town and parish councils, and a new protocol on managing groundwater flooding during the winter period, and also, which I know is very important to the rural areas, starting a volunteer snow warden scheme. More detail is in the report, and I will mention some of the things because I think the public need to know as well as everybody else. The report suggests that the council builds into its winter service plan a gully cleansing programme that takes into account the higher risk of prolonged wet weather during the winter period, recruits sufficient staff to support the flood risk manager in their work, uses the new flood risk staff to work with agricultural businesses to minimise silt runoff from fields, and liaises with farmers and other organisations through its agricultural vehicles group to minimise mud and other debris left on the highway. Specifies an effective customer service function within its winter plan. Ensures that this function operates during the winter period, and in particular during periods of cold or wet weather that is likely to result in flooded or freezing conditions. Ensures that existing routine reporting tools such as My Shropshire are monitored and actioned upon. Strengthens its communications plan to include closer communication with town and parish councils, as well as community and third sector organisations. And finally, ensures that any communications plan includes residents who do not use the internet. The committee is expecting a report back to the Place Overview Committee in September. However, there are concerns that work is yet to start, given that the new winter period starts at the end of October, and also bearing in mind the issues of financing extra works that would need to be done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Barrow, for that. So Cabinet will note that report, but I also note that Place Committee are going to look into that again at a later date to see what's been happening. So I thank you for that. So we will note that report and move on.
Thank you.
I'm struggling to see if there are any questions from anybody. So if any of the committee services staff see that somebody is looking to speak online, perhaps they could wave at me. Thank you, Tim. Okay, moving on to item number 7, which is the financial outturn 2021. Councillor William Butler.
Thank you, Leader. My goodness, what a year this has been. If we go back to February 2020, when we actually approved the financial strategy, who would have known within 3 to 4 weeks of that we would have been in national lockdown? But I'm pleased to be here today and I want to reiterate, Leader, what you said earlier. I want to send a huge message of thanks on behalf of members on how the resources team and all the staff of Shropshire Council has reacted to the pandemic, both with working remotely from home, deliver existing business as usual. I know some neighbouring authorities actually closed their planning department down during lockdown. We didn't. We kept going and we kept everything running. The support for partners in managing the pandemic, and we've managed 170 million of new grants and payments to businesses, council services impacted by the pandemic, and that has really helped and supported the people of Shropshire and their communities going through the pandemic. However, although we have an underspend this year of just over 700 million, I believe we have a bumpy road ahead. However, I think we have the structures and the staff in place, which has been proved over the last 12 months, to deal with anything that is thrown at us. As members are aware, or for the benefit of new members, back in February Council, I brought a motion to Council about lobbying for fairer funding and levelling up for Shropshire. And we as members have got to continually do this, because until we get funding from central government improved, our finances will be stretched, and our capital programme, we will have to make priorities. And we as a cabinet, working with all members, will have to actually make some hard decisions. Should members wish to scrutinise this in any way or have any questions, please, as with any other portfolio, historic members will know I have an open door policy. However, if you have detailed questions, please table them to me as soon as possible after receipt of the report, because I would like to have those questions debated openly in public with the answers, to reiterate that open door policy. Therefore, Chair, I move the recommendations 8K for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Do you have a second for that?
Second, and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Carroll. Councillor David Basma, you wish to ask a question?
Thank you. I've got a number of questions actually, which I'd quickly like to run through on this report. And picking up what Councillor Butler was saying before about we have a bumpy road ahead. If you look at this report, the savings, there are a number of savings which have not been achieved and are continually carried forward. If you look at page 8, table 8, and page 9, table 9. There's over 7 million of savings not achieved, and the problem is that from year to year we're carrying this forward, and the reserves, we will be running out of financial reserves at some point quite soon, and there will be a big hole in the budget, and basically unless fairer funding comes through, the council could go bankrupt. So I mean, I think that there is a real concern on my part and part of my group about the problems we've got. Also on the capital programme, our capital programme is underperforming. Our overall spend this year was 65.7 million. Whereas the original budget was 119 million, and I would be interested to hear responses on that point. Also, there's underspending on the housing revenue account. The original budget was 17 million on new homes and repairs, but there's only been spent of 4.55 million. So clearly, we're not actually getting the number of affordable homes built that we want, and therefore it would be useful to get some idea of how what plans there are to speed up the provision of affordable homes. On broadband, similarly, the budget is 9.7 million for 2021, but the outturn was 1.41 million. So again, we're not achieving our aims in these areas, and broadband is so important in rural areas and some urban areas where there's poor reception, and very vital for business. On highways and transport, there was an underspend of 5 million. If you look at the Q2 budget, 39.73 million, and spending 34.78 million. So there's an underspend there, and despite the actual the demand that we spend £40 million extra and a promise in the election campaign over 4 years, we've been underspent this year by 5 million. Also on corporate budgets contributed 4.14 million to offsetting spending, and that's largely taken up by a raid on the minimum revenue provision. Now that is the provision which actually allows us to repay our debt, our borrowing, and it doesn't seem right to be doing that, and especially when that's agreed separately in February, when we have the Treasury report in February. On the The commercial investment programme, I think in February Council, we set out agreed a budget of £18 million over 4 years, but clearly that's not being spent. There's not the spending going ahead on the commercial investment programme, and there needs to be a review of that programme, whether it's going to achieve what it set out to achieve. On the shopping centres, I'm not very happy that the details in this report are not very clear, but it's exactly what the profit and loss, if you like, on the shopping centres. There's clearly a drop in income, obviously resulting from COVID, but there's also increased costs, and a recent FOI answer detailed quite serious loss of income. I'd be interested to get more details on that, and particularly on recommendation K as well. There's a £0.5 million which is being set aside, and be interesting to get the comments of the finance director on that. And also there's on page 36 there's a reference to on-staff costs of 0.476 million. I'd be interested to know what that is. But anyway, those are a number of questions which I'd like to raise on the financial strategy. It's a very important document, very detailed document. There are lots of items in here, but I do think that the council is not achieving some of its budgetary aims, particularly on savings, and this could have serious impacts once the financial reserves run out, because essentially we are covering the fact that we're not making savings by dipping into our financial reserves, and long term that's unsustainable unless, less fairer funding comes forward and rescues us. But I have serious concerns.
Thank you, Councillor Vasner. Councillor Alan Mosley.
Yeah, I appreciate the comments that David Vasner's made. I think these are probably issues that need more detailed discussion at the scrutiny, performance scrutiny, in due course. But I am concerned that the underspend is an underspend on a budget that has been significantly, massively cut over the last 10 years, and in a sense represents further cuts in that budget. But of those £7 million cuts that haven't been achieved, the report does point out that £6 million is still not delivered and may not be deliverable. And I've got a question for the finance director, because the last report that he gave prior to the election indicated that the council could be in dire straits if certain things didn't happen in terms of the sustainability of the business. So this is to do with fair funding. This is to do with the settlement that local government will be receiving, and other government payouts, as it were. Could he please tell us now, in 4 or 5 months later since that last strategic finance report, whether or not he is clearer on whether the council funding is sustainable, taking account of us not delivering the cuts that have been promised, and taking account of a failure of the government to implement any of the promises about changing the funding methodology. It is, are we still in dire straits in terms of the actual sustainability of this council going forward?
Thank you, Councillor Mosley. I'll ask James Wharton, our Director of Resources, to comment later. Councillor Carroll, you have a question.
Thank you. Thank you, Leader. It's not a question, it's a response particularly on some of the issues that Councillor Vasner raised from the perspective of my own directorate. That is that despite COVID and in spite of, is this mic on? Now, yes. In spite of COVID, in spite of being in the middle of a pandemic, the adult services department still managed to achieve an underspend of £5.2 million in the adult social care department on its own. That has been slightly offset by increased costs in housing that we have gladly borne in order to fulfil and build upon the government's No One Left Out programme, which has seen us make use of over 300 units of temporary accommodation of various sorts, and that's not come without cost. And that there has been additional costs in Public Health Directorate that we have not been able to, make the savings originally planned because of COVID. So I think it's completely unfair and incorrect to say that this is in any way due to poor management. I think actually the management of the finances and the management of the operations has been staggeringly, stupendously good under the circumstances that we have never experienced before. So I do take exception to Councillor Vasmer's comments on that. I'd also like to bring his attention to a table on page, where's the page number? Page 9, which actually demonstrates that where savings haven't been able to be achieved because of COVID grant funding has been applied to negate those savings in year. So it is not correct in what he's saying that this has come from reserves. And I do question whether he's actually read the entirety of the paper. If I move on, please, to the housing revenue account capital underspend, I think there's two very important things to remember here. Firstly, that is marshalled and stewardship of that lies with Shropshire Towns and Rural Housing Association, the council's arm's length management company for social housing, not with Shropshire Council itself. And also the nature of developing projects means that you don't always achieve a consistent outflow of money, because that's not the way that housing projects are developed. In some years you will have greater expenditure because you will have more land available and be able to deliver more properties. When you also couple with that with the fact that we've been going through the pandemic, as reflects on the other comments I've made, that it's been increasingly difficult during parts of that year to actually get on site and finish properties. The external work hasn't been as badly affected, but the internal work, where a lot of cost is incurred through things like electricians and very specialist skills, that has been simply impossible for large parts of the past 12 months. So I do not recognise the commentary that Councillor Vasmer has made, and I wanted to make that point absolutely clear, that the management, particularly in adult social care, public health and housing, has been incredible over the past 12 months.
Thank you, Councillor Carroll. James Walton, Director of Resources, would you care to comment on some of the points specifically made by Councillor Mosley?
Thank you, Lydia. Yeah, I can pick on some of those points. Obviously, there was a lot of questions there, and we probably need to come back with more detail a little bit later. But generally, a lot of the questions are all linked in with one another, and a number of the points have already been picked up. So fundamentally, over this the last financial year, there were huge impacts in relation to COVID-19. So the £18.7 million savings that were identified for the 2021 financial year were severely impacted by that. We still managed to deliver almost £12 million of those savings, and the £7 million that we didn't achieve, that we weren't able to achieve, 4 million of that was clearly identified as an implication directly of COVID-19 lockdown, etc., etc. So a government grant was applied to that, which helped to ensure that we didn't therefore have to deal with that shortfall. On top of that, and to continue on with the tables are in the report, table 10, which is on page 9 of the report, page 23, and top of page 24 of the pack, demonstrates that of that 7 million, almost £6 million is being carried forward to the 21-22 financial year, where it is hoped that those savings can then be delivered. So this is not about savings being undeliverable. This is about the circumstances in that particular year that we had to manage. That is the narrative that flows across the whole of the capital programme. So the delays that have been talked about, the underspends that have been identified, have either been managed underspends because of the approach and the policy undertaken by the authority, or have been a direct result of COVID-19 implications. The MRP saving that was referenced, well, that was an MRP saving which arose because the capital programme didn't deliver what it was anticipated to deliver at the start of the year. So all these things link together. If you can't deliver the capital programme, then you won't undertake the same level of expenditure that you normally do. Therefore, you won't need to put the same minimum revenue provision aside, and therefore that can be taken as a saving. So combined with the government grants, combined with the slippage within the programme, that enabled us to deliver an overall balanced budget. So there are a number of areas in there. Again, it talks about commercial investment that was referenced. Again, this has taken a while to get up and running and clearly was impacted on the last year. The shopping centres were referenced. We are not going to be disclosing within the public document detailed information around commercial profit and loss within the shopping centres. But what we will do is provide the overarching details and figures for that, and what they demonstrate was that regardless of a very, very difficult trading year, nevertheless, a profit was still delivered on the trading element of those. It was not in line with the budget, but nevertheless, it was still a return to the council. And I think that covers off most of the areas, but as I say, happy to come back with more detail further down the line.
Thank you, James. I think one thing that before coming back to the portfolio holder to respond, I think one thing that does register with me is that we do need to take into account that the last 12 months have been, I can't even say unusual because that's not the word, that COVID has had a major impact on the authority. But I do want to say here and now that actually the work that has gone in by this council over the last 12 months and to bring forward financial results like this, frankly, is astonishing. The other thing I would say is Councillor Butler made the point that if he had known in advance of some of these matters, that doesn't mean to say that you can't ask the questions during the meeting, Councillor Vasma, but we would have had far more detail for you than giving you off the cuff remarks. We'd rather give you the detail. Councillor Butler, if you'd like to come back on that.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to thank Councillor Carroll and James for their responses. They've covered an awful lot of it. And yourself, Leader. I would really have liked to have had these questions early, so we could have had that public debate and the openness so everybody gets to know all the facts. And what I'm not happy about is both Councillor Vasmar and Councillor Mosley scaremongering. There is no reason to scaremonger in this council. We will get there and we will deliver. So I want to put that one to bed once and for all. The other things I want to just briefly, this report is the engine of the business, okay? It covers lots and lots of portfolio. For example, affordable housing, it is not just about how we deliver it, it's about how Konobi deliver it in the future, how we have influence on that and our support for them. I know broadband is the #1 priority of Councillor Rob Gittins. You know, and he is already pledged that the 1,400 properties that need super fast broadband, that is his #1 criteria. Again, with the shopping centres, one thing I would like to really reiterate here to the people of Shrewsbury and Shropshire is, if we hadn't got those shopping centres or hadn't spent that money would be invested at approximately, we'd be lucky if we get 1/4%. And the lower income we're actually receiving actually represents over 2%. well over 2%, so it's a good value still for what we're doing. But moreover, would they like those shops boarded up with an overseas landlord to decide on the future of Shrewsbury, our county town, or do they want a brought together project working with the town council and the bid to actually deliver that strategy? What I would like to do for members of any party in this organisation is let's get together and all deliver for the benefit of Shrewsbury and Shropshire. And please, can we stop this negative after we are coming out of a pandemic? Because I really don't think the public will appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mosley and Councillor Vasra, I'm going to both let you come back briefly. Councillor Mosley first.
I don't think James Walton fully answered the aspect of the question that I placed with him, in that in the financial strategy there was significant concern about the sustainable elements of the council in terms of finance, which were dependent upon such things as fairer funding and other changes in the budgetary settlement. I did ask, could he give us an update on whether or not those warnings that he gave are now mitigated by government action, and what is the latest news on additional funding that was supposed to be coming to us?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Mosley. Councillor Vasma.
Yes, thank you. Yes, just in response, I mean no criticism of staff at all. I think staff in the finance and adult social care have do a fantastic job. And indeed, the questions I've raised are because there's so much detail within this report we've got today. But I would like to say that that there have been problems with COVID. I agree, but there is a history in this authority of the council identifying savings and then not achieving them, and then carrying that forward, and that cannot continue. And we have to have some realistic discussions about the finances on this authority, and not try and hide it because we do need, and I agree with Councillor Mosley, we do need to have some idea of what's happening about fairer funding and where we're going, because that is absolutely crucial to the future of this authority.
Thank you, Councillor Vasma. I'll come back to both of you on that. I have a call with Robert Jenrick this week, where I will be pressing him on the matter of fairer funding. We know that unfortunately, due to the COVID pandemic, that things haven't happened as we would hope, but I will be pressing him on that. I'll also be pressing him on the fact that levelling up funding isn't just about the organisations and the councils in the north of this county, of this country. It's also about those rural counties that have suffered significantly. The Finance Task and Finish Group, which will be before performance scrutiny as well, will be looking in depth at these budgets. So I hope that you will accept that the work that comes out of that is a way of looking at the in-depth situation of the finances going forward. And I will ask James to, I won't ask James to respond now to you, Councillor Mosley, but I will ask that we bring forward a document to tell you about the overall position of the council in the very near future. Thank you. So I have a proposer for that vote. I have a seconder. Is there anybody against? No, thank you. So that report is accepted. Moving on to item number 8, the cultural strategy. Councillor Cecilia Motley.
Thank you very much, Leader. I'm very pleased to be able to present to members the cultural strategy, Vibrant Shropshire, Independent by Nature. It's particularly pleasing to be able to produce this at a time when we're just beginning to come out of COVID, when the cultural sector has had a very, very torrid time as a result of COVID, as everybody will know, and this is actually demonstrating real confidence in the future of the cultural sector, and so I think it's an excellent piece of work. There's a lot of work gone into this. It's taken a huge amount of very wide-ranging consultation, and I would just like to pay tribute to Claire Featherstone and the team that she assembled to undertake this work, because it really was a massive operation, and I can attest to that, particularly as I was a member of the Cultural Strategy Working Group myself, actually representing the rural voice at the time. So it's really good to see this coming to fruition. This is going to supersede the 5-year strategy, which I think was initially put in place in 2010, and of course it's not really relevant anymore. This vision is going to run to 2030, and what we really want to do with this is to really involve more and more local communities and people to create and be active, to enjoy themselves. There's a golden thread running through here, in various golden threads indeed, not just health and well-being, which is a very important one, but also building up our considerable cultural and heritage offer, and also thereby helping the local economy, helping all those people who work in the tourism industry as well, and also enhancing our environment. So I mean, this is an ambitious piece of work, but as I say, an awful lot of work has gone into it. Members will note that we have carried out extensive consultation with all sorts of stakeholders, and also there is a part of this report which goes into COVID and the response to COVID and how everybody has come through COVID. And there's no doubt about it that COVID has really, really hit the sector bad. So it's great to see us be able to pick ourselves up at this point and look to the future with some confidence. You'll note that there were a lot of responses, detailed written responses as well. There's been considerable enthusiasm in the cultural sector for the production of the strategy. And one of the positive developments arising from this will be, as I mentioned previously in the questions, is the development of an independent cultural partnership for Shropshire, and hopefully a cultural compact, which the Arts Council is very keen on supporting us with. And we want to work up a 3-year implementation plan for this and identify funding sources from there. And as I said before, it is absolutely essential that we do have this cultural strategy, because without it, it's very difficult for us to raise serious funding or to be taken seriously in the cultural world. So it's also going to enable a new approach which will integrate different policy working areas and council services, as well as including partner organisations and businesses in a climate, particularly, as I mentioned before, where external funding is becoming increasingly competitive. So I do commend this to you. I would like to move the recommendations in item 2. It may be a short report, this, but there are a lot of very interesting appendices, which I hope you will have had a chance to study. And I hope we can give this a fair win today. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Motley. Do I have a seconder for that? Kirsty Hurst-Knight, thank you very much indeed. I have a request from Councillor Vasma to speak on this, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think this is an excellent report, and the cultural strategy is one which I fully support, and I think it is really needed. My only concern really is that the implementation of this. We're talking about a 3-week. I think Councillor Celia Motley was talking about 3 years for an implementation plan, and obviously we've got the period leading up to the kind of drawing up of that plan. And I wondered whether it would be possible to include some timelines maybe in this recommendation, that we give ourselves deadlines as to when this strategy can be implemented and when the improvement plan can be sorted out. So it's a matter really of kind of implementation really.
Councillor Motley?
Yes, thank you, Leader. Yes, I take your point. The implementation of this is going to be quite complex, because it is quite complex. It's quite a complex sector, as we all know. An awful lot of things come within the cultural sector. I'm happy to discuss, including timelines, with the team, and we'll be happy to come back on that one.
Thank you. Are you happy with that? Thank you, Councillor Vasma. Okay. Anybody else? No. I have a proposer. I have a seconder. All in favour? Thank you very much. We now have a cultural strategy. Item number 9. Cecilia Motley show today. Item number 9. Options report. Over to you, Cecilia.
Thank you very much. Again, Leader, this is another really positive report, and I hope everybody will be in Whitchurch will be very pleased to see it. Forgive me, I'm just busy scrolling here. Basically, the situation with Whitchurch is that it has had a swimming pool which was built in 1972, so it's nearly 50 years old. It's run by Shropshire Community Leisure Trust. It had to close during the COVID pandemic, along with all the other facilities, but it couldn't reopen because it wasn't large enough to organise social distancing. And you will remember there was quite a debate about that at one point. During that time, it was discovered that the pool had a leak, quite a serious leak, and therefore a structural survey was carried out on it, which found that it was actually subsiding because it's built on a gravelly subsoil, and there is this leak, and it was deemed, the foundations are deemed to be inadequate, and the building itself is not in good shape. It is deteriorating. It's not surprising. It is, after all, 50 years old. So this has got to be addressed. Whitchurch really deserves better than an extremely old and rather creaky swimming pool. This does give us the opportunity to actually look at doing things completely different for Whitchurch. So what we are thinking in terms of, and members will see that there are various options, options 1 to 6. One says do nothing, fill the pool and get on with it. But we can't really entertain that because it is just, it's basically a failing piece of equipment, and therefore it really needs to be replaced. So the option 1, do nothing, we discounted very quickly, and the option that we've come down on is option 6, which actually allows us to have a completely new build, not an old traditional style build, but a completely new build with 6-lane, 25 metres, with a movable floor, which will be very important, a 35-station fitness suite, a dance studio, and a cafe with 20 covers. This, we feel, will be a really brilliant focal point for Whitchurch, and we do feel that this is something which has got to be very seriously considered. Obviously, we need to test the deliverability and the affordability of the new build options and explore the opportunities to generate more participation and further income. Members will note in section 3 the rationale for an improved facility. I hope I've made that fairly clear. Swimming provision in the north of the county is not covered by the 3 swimming facilities in Ludlow, Shrewsbury and Oswestry, so it relies on the pools at Market Drayton and Whitchurch. And actually, before it was closed, Whitchurch did have a high user rate, something like 80% user rate. It's also worth remembering that Shropshire is growing. We're getting more housing development. There's more housing development going in around Whitchurch, so it's quite appropriate that we consider this new facility now. I'd also draw your attention to 3.17, which points out that it's not the level of provision that is a problem with this pool, so much as the age and the condition of the facilities on offer. And it's also worth noting that the subsidy costs for the pool are £145,000 per annum. If you look at 3.26, this details the options. As I say, what we're looking for is a complete replacement, and the do nothing option, which would involve keeping the facilities closed, would still come at some cost, around £26,000 per annum. And to do the required repair and maintenance on the current state of the pool, it wouldn't last long term, and it would still need a serious outlay of 1.25 million, indeed just to fill the pool. So the most secure and the viable option, which would appear to be a new build, and I would urge members to give this very serious consideration, since although it's going to require a significant capital outlay, It will at least secure the long-term future of the facility, as well as hugely enhancing the offer for the people of Whitchurch. And frankly, as I've said before, Whitchurch deserves better than a failing 50-year-old facility. And I think this will be a real added attraction to the town. It also meets Shropshire's collective priority to improve community health and well-being at all stages of life, and it will encourage increased participation in a range of physical activities, and crucially be much more cost effective to operate, because it will combine a range of physical activities on one site, and we're hoping that it will turn out to be a profitable venture. Therefore, I commend the recommendations under item 2 to Cabinet, and the principal recommendation that option 6 should be taken forward to the next stage of feasibility and due diligence, and be brought back to Cabinet for further consideration. So I would like to move the recommendation, please.
Thank you, Cecilia. Do I have a second for that? Yeah, thank you, Councillor Gittins. I have questions. Councillor Peggy Mullock joining us online.
Morning, everybody. I would like to please ensure that the youth are considered in this bid, because they're having their youth centre demolished, and I think they're getting a bit of a short deal at the moment. Also, why are we moving the library when we've just spent money on the present place? That has been the concern that we've had from residents over the last few days. Really pleased about the pool. I want to move forward. But those are a couple of the questions that I'd like answered, please.
Thank you, Councillor Mullock. Councillor David Vasmo.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, I'm very supportive of this recommendation. Item 6, I think Councillor Cecilia Mottley has outlined it very clearly, the need for this. But my only concern is similar to the cultural strategy, is of time. Obviously, the people of Whitchurch have been without a swimming pool for some time already, and of course this will be further delayed. Obviously, it's good that they're going to get a new pool in the future, but it would be good to actually set some timelines, set some aims and targets to actually achieve this, so that people can look forward to the new facility in Whitchurch.
Thank you, Councillor Vasmo. Councillor Tom Biggins joining us online.
Thank you, Leader. All the three local members very much welcome this report, and we'd like to thank you as leader, and indeed the portfolio holder, Mrs. Mottley, for the hard work you've put in on this. The message really is very clear today. On behalf of the people of Whitchurch, please may we have a new swimming pool as soon as possible. That is the very, very clear message. I was wondering if it's possible to curtail or shorten in some way the consultation and engagement period, because I think it's fair to say that none of us as local members are aware of anybody locally who in any way would object to the building of a new swimming pool. So please support option 6 today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Biggins. Councillor Mottley, do you want to come back on those?
Yeah, I'll just come back. First of all, Peggy, yes, I appreciate that the youth service building has closed. I would just say, though, that I do think that this facility, because of its flexibility, will offer a lot of new opportunities for young people. If they're interested in physical activity, and most of them are, of one sort or another, club swimming will be able to be carried out at the pool. Because there's a flexible floor, we can also accommodate, they'll also be able to accommodate learners, because you can close off part of the pool to make it easier for them. And with regards to the situation with youth services as such, that's not my area, so I'm not going to go into it. But I certainly take what you say, Peggy, and we'll take it very seriously. As far as the library is concerned, yes, I'm aware that the library was done up recently, but this was actually part of an ongoing maintenance programme. And it was also, with all due respect, it was undertaken prior to knowing that the pool wouldn't be able to reopen. The reason that we're thinking about incorporating the library into the new pool is because we feel that it will really enhance the offer, and it may well draw in a cohort of people who otherwise would not necessarily consider seriously taking that sort of physical activity. A lot of people are very keen to go to the library. They may not necessarily be so keen on thinking about other activities, but if they've got it all there in front of them, it may very well tempt them, which can only be good for the health of Whitchurch. So I think that we are considering it. This is not a firm decision. We've got to make sure that the whole thing is going to work. So I hope that's okay with you, Peggy.
Fine.
David Vasmer, a lot of work is already going on this. We're bringing it back to Cabinet with worked up plans March 2022. This may sound like a long time, but actually a lot of work needs to go into this because it's quite a complex set of asks that we're trying to put into one building. So I think you're going to have to bear with us on that one. Tom, thank you very much for your kind remarks. Consultation engagement tends to be a rather statutory thing. I mean, I look to my peers here, but I suspect that it's not something that we can really play around with very much. There tends always to be a statutory consultation period. And obviously, the more responses we get and the more support there is for the pool, the better it will be for us. So if you could maybe take that back to your residents and just say, yes, we do have to do the consultation and engagement, but please make sure you participate, and then we'll understand how popular this is going to be.
Thank you, Cecilia. I think there are various lengths of consultation that you can do, and we could try to shorten it to some extent. Yeah. But as Cecilia is right, there is a statutory responsibility to do this. What I will say also, Peggy, is because I'll take my leader hat on off and put my old portfolio hat on, I'll ask one of the officers to get in touch with you who's been doing some work on the swimming pool, library, youth service bit, because there's quite a lot of discussions going on with the town council as well. So I'll get one of the officers to speak to you. And I can see that Gerald, Councillor Dakin, you've got your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you. Cabinet and Leader, I'm very pleased to see that you listen to Whitchurch and getting this show on the road. It's absolutely essential that we have a swimming pool as quickly as possible, of course. But consultation is going to be very, very important. And I think you'll find that during your consultation with the area in Whitchurch, that the library is not as something we need particularly to shift, but we do need somewhere for youth. We've got an excellent all-weather pitch there that at the present time isn't being used. The youth has been neglected in Whitchurch for the last 3 or 4 years anyway. And I think when the consultation starts, I think you'll hear quite a lot about people wanting to have some facilities for youth. I hope it doesn't delay it, because it's important that we get on with it as soon as possible. But perhaps you will listen maybe to the call for a youth facility here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dakin. I'm sure Councillor Motley's taken that on board.
Absolutely, Gerald. That message has gone home loud and clear.
Okay, so thank you. I don't have anybody else indicating they wish to speak, so we have a proposal and a seconder. All those in favour? Thank you. That's unanimous. Okay, so item number 10, Statement of Community Involvement Adoption. Councillor Ed Potter.
Thank you very much, Leader. The Statement of Community Involvement is an important planning document that every local planning authority must adopt. As Shropshire Council currently has a SCI, which was reviewed in 2014. So in line with government guidance, a revised CSI was produced and subject to a consultation for 12 weeks between the 9th of November 2020 of last year and the 1st of February of this year. The outlined in the report are revisions to the Statement of Community Involvement. The primary principle of the Statement of Community Involvement is to ensure that during the planning, both planning policy and planning applications, that members of the public and organisations how they're informed, how this takes place, when it takes place, and the methods that are used. So the proposed revisions are outlined between paragraphs 3 right through to 8. 8 interestingly includes a significant table of amendments that were made to the following the consultation period, which have been taken on board. Therefore, I'd like to recommend to Cabinet that we adopt this. The recommendation is simple at paragraph 2, that the updated statement of community involvement is approved by Cabinet and adopted by Shropshire Council.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. Do I have a seconder?
Formally seconded, reserve my votes, please.
Thank you, Councillor Carroll. I have Councillor David Basma, please.
Thank you. I welcome this report. Just like a couple of issues, really. One is on para 5. I think you state that there'll be withdrawal of letters to neighbours. But this seems in contradiction to paragraph 8, section 3.3, where you're talking about reaching communities and making sure that planning applications are considered by a wider group of people. And it seems silly to withdraw the facility of sending letters to neighbours at the same time just thinking of ways of expanding the number of people who respond to planning applications. Secondly, on section 4.9 within paragraph 8, the issue of councillors being able to call in planning applications. I personally think that it's wrong. I think that councillors should be able to call in and they shouldn't be subject to the decisions of the chair and vice chair of the planning committee. But even if that is the case going forward, then there should be proper recording of decisions and why decisions are taken, because I often have cases myself where decisions are not referred to planning committee, are referred to officers for resolving, and there is no clear indication of why that's happened, and there quite often is clear community concern over these applications and are not resolved. And I think that undermines the planning system. It leads people to believe that they're not being consulted and their views are not important. So I'd like a response to those two issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Mosley. Councillor Basma. Councillor Mosley.
Yeah, Alan Mosley, leader of the Labour Group. We all know the horrendous planning changes that were being proposed by the Tory government. We also know that these are being challenged even by Tory MPs, particularly following the disastrous by-elections recently. Could Councillor Potter please tell us that if this new legislation was carried, as explained in the white paper, what would be the implications for the CSI? Because it seems to me that democratic accountability in making planning decisions will be significantly, massively reduced if that comes to fruition.
Thank you, Councillor Mosley. We all watch too many programmes. Crime scene investigation, I believe, is CSI. But Councillor Potter.
Oh, sorry.
Councillor Potter, would you like to come back on that one?
Thank you very much, Leader. Just touching on Councillor Basma's points, obviously reaching out to members of the community is notoriously difficult to ensure that everyone has the information they require. There are a number of useful ways in which this can happen, and we're going to encourage members of the public to sign up through the planning portal to receive notifications within their area, so they can be aware of they can be aware of developments that might be occurring, and they'll get a notification. As local members, we all receive these ourselves, and obviously as proactive local members, I would hope we would encourage to go out and represent our communities and ensure that people are fully informed. I know in rural areas, communication to the parish council who consider planning applications is very important, and alongside site notices, obviously publication in the parish council agendas, often through newsletters and notice boards, that are actually vital for people. But I hear what Councillor Basma was saying about the letters, which again have proven difficult in the past within our communities, where certain residents receive letters because they're adjacent to a planning application and other neighbours don't, which can actually cause a significant amount of grievance in communities at that level. I think the important thing to notice is the site notices will be actively displayed, which is one way in which communities can actually see there and then what the application is going forward. So in terms of Councillor Mosley's point, I think his question is a bit beyond this paper. We are making representations to government in consultation to the wider planning changes, and as that develops, we will continue to keep making those representations.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. I don't have anybody else indicating they wish to speak, so we have it proposed in second. All in favour? Thank you very much. Moving on to item number 11, which is the exclusion of press and public. I'm happy to propose this.
Yeah, happy to second, Leader.
Seconded by Councillor Steve Chalmley. We would now like to exclude the press and public. Thank you very much, and I'll wait for people who are maybe still online. I'm just waiting for the clearance to say that we are now no longer